On today's episode of The Athlete's Mindset, I'm joined by Kenyon Yovan, a pitcher in the Los Angeles Angels organization and one of the most accomplished two-way players in University of Oregon history. Kenyon's journey is a unique one. At Oregon, he was an all-Pac-12 performer who left his mark on both sides of the ball, finishing his career top 10 all-time in multiple categories, including home runs, RBIs, and strikeouts on the mound. His work ethic made him a standout at the collegiate level and helped him launch his professional career. In this episode, we dive into Kenyon's path from college to pro ball, the mental challenges of transitioning into professional baseball, and what it takes to stay consistent and confident as a pitcher. This is a great conversation for anyone interested in the mental side of baseball, embracing versatility, and what it really takes to compete at the next level. Let's get into it. Kenyon, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Glad to be on.
Dude, living the dream. Happy to get you on. You're enjoying your trip out in Myrtle Beach. So glad you golfed to 77 today. Like, I want to highlight that. Had a big year in 2025. You know, you became a father, had an unbelievable season, and now you're dominating the off season. But before we get into that, I want to talk about kind of your time at Oregon. What went into your decision to choosing to play baseball at the University of Oregon?
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest thing was, being from Oregon, I wanted to stay close to home. Family was really important to me. And, um, being whether it was Corvallis or Eugene, I mean, it's, within a 2-hour drive. So, biggest thing, I grew up obviously around Oregon State baseball, and Oregon didn't have a program. So, I grew up watching them, and obviously they won 2 titles back to back in '05 and '06 or '06, '07, whatever it was. And, be able to watch that. And then actually I had a pitching coach, Kevin Gunderson, who was the closer for one of the teams when they won it. And, uh, yeah, and so it was fun. I bounced a couple ideas off of him, off other guys. And the biggest thing that I came down to after I took information from everyone was, I wanted to go out there and be the first guy to, win a national title or make it to Omaha for Oregon for the first time. And so that was like the whole thing for me is I wanted to be, the home state kid that helped take the program to a new level. And, obviously you're competing with Oregon State. I mean, they're, top 5, top 10 every year, especially when we were coming up. And, they won the title in 18. And so, it's, that was like the big thing for me. It was, I wanted to be close to home, but two, I wanted to help a program that was, that Oregon was really good. They ran a couple supers and stuff early on, but there was a stretch where we didn't make it. And, didn't make it my first 3 years of school either, but it was just, I wanted to, have the chance to be able to make it to Omaha for the first time as a Duck.
100%. I think that's so cool that, I mean, like you said, being from Oregon, even just, myself having family in Oregon, it was always just Oregon State baseball. Like, that was kind of all that you knew about. You never really thought of Oregon, even when Oregon did bring their program back. It was all about the Beavers. And so, yeah, I think it's pretty cool. You played for George Horton for a little bit, who was unbelievable and I'm a huge fan of. But to start out on the pitching side of your time at Oregon, you were a two-way your first couple of years, but you were dominant on the mound. What do you attribute that success on the mound to?
I mean, I would attribute most of it to all of it to Coach Dietrich, Jason Dietrich, who's now the head at Fullerton. I mean, he. I mean, I came in as a very my way is the highway type of pitcher. Like I know the way that I'm going to do it, and the best thing for me was go out there and continue to do what I wanted to do. And he taught me, you don't get your way. If
Yeah.
you don't like it, go run the stadiums. So the biggest thing for me was, he kind of calloused my brain into a way that when I got into big situations, it was nothing. Like even though I wasn't in them before, like he made practice tougher than games. He made, um, but he also had a soft side where it was being able to like have a full conversation with him, be able to work with him and stuff like that. And um, so it was really big. That was really big for me, and I think that's the biggest contributor when it comes to the pitching side, especially first in Oregon, freshman, no idea what my role is going to be, and he was just on your butt the entire time.
Yeah. Dietz was crazy because I remember when I was at Fullerton, he was the head guy. He still
Yeah,
was just in control of all the pitchers. And we would
yeah,
have pitchers that would just throw a bullpen in September, so in the fall, and they would leave their bullpen so pissed off because it was like they would throw 3 balls in a row, 4 balls in a row, and Dietz was like, "All right, you're done. Like, we're not
Yep.
gonna allow that to happen in the game, so we're not just gonna let you do it." And so guys would just be like walking down on the field, and I'm like, "Damn, like, what's wrong?" And they're like, Dietz just kicked me out." And I'm like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah. We had a rule. It was if one guy had a 4-pitch walk in any of the games during the series, the entire team had stadiums next week. It was 5
Mhm.
stadiums for every 4-pitch walk for the entire pitching staff. So we had some rough Mondays sometimes.
Yeah, that sounds brutal, especially when you just it comes to Sunday and the staff has just been dominant all weekend, and then you have one
Yeah.
guy that just can't find it, and you're like, "Oh, we're gonna be running tomorrow."
Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the tough love that you need, though, and especially when you are a freshman, you're getting into college, is realizing I can't just do things how I want to do them, and also I'm not going to develop if I just do what I've been doing forever.
Yeah, and it helped a lot of us. I mean, we all talk about it. Um, helps us, pass just the sport. It's
Mhm.
like into just normal life the way that he calloused us. And Coach Hort did the same thing, being able to work with us and not just teach us how to be baseball players. They try to teach us how to be men outside, take care of your
Mhm.
families, take care of the people around you, the community and stuff like that. So, they can, they helped mold us into men instead of just athletes, which was great.
Oh, 100%. So we're getting into the 2019 season where you're probably feeling pretty confident going into it. And then real early on, you develop an injury, shoulder injury, and some other things going on. Can you talk about just what that injury was?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was coming into the season and, you know, on my high horse. I played at USA the year before, or the summer before, and was coming in, projected pretty high in the draft. And um, going in there, we go to Texas Tech. It's 85 degrees outside. I'm a Friday guy, starting against another potential top 2 round pick, and it was big hype going in the series. It was kind of one of our first really big series, like outside of the West Coast. We haven't really
Mhm.
traveled much. Um, it's 85 degrees. I'm in the bullpen, and uh, I throw my last pitch, go and shake my catcher's hand, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, I mean, yeah, I feel good. I don't like."
Mhm.
It was kind of a weird question at the time because I'm locked in trying to go into the
Not what
game,
you want to hear before you're
and
about to go in the
yeah,
game.
yeah, no, and I was like, okay, and the first thing came to mind, I was like, okay, is my stuff not good? Like, am I not ready? I feel good?
Mhm.
And he's like, look at your hand. And my hand was like ghost white. Tips of my fingers were purple. Um, and I was like, "Yeah, that's kinda weird." Like, I kinda felt it the week before, but it was cold in Eugene, so it was like, who knows? It's just it's 40 degrees in February. I mean, I've dealt with this my whole life. Like, it is
Yeah.
what it is. So, um, get to the dugout. Obviously, we're away, so we hit, go whatever. Feeling comes back, like, hands red, blood flow's going well. Go out there, get through, like, my first few warm-up pitches, and I'm like, "Oh, my forearm's starting to cramp up a little bit," but, I'm young, feel like I'm invincible, so I can still do whatever I want. And I continue to go, and, like, I would probably say 5, 6 pitches in my at bat or into the second at bat, I start feeling like a cramp where like my thumb, like I usually tuck my thumb under the ball.
Mhm.
I couldn't get it to the middle of the baseball, let alone over there.
Yeah.
And, and here comes Josh Young, who's a big leaguer now. He's a first rounder.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is going to be really fun for me.
Mhm.
And so I ended up throwing, I think it was like 14 pitches, 15 pitches in the first inning, gave up a run, but I threw all sliders. I threw one fastball because I couldn't get my thumb under the ball.
Were you
And
just out there
so
just shaking the whole time? Just like, "Oh, you want a
I was just
fastball?"
shaking the whole time. I
All
was
we
like,
got is a slider.
"No."
Yeah.
I was like, "I don't know what's happening." So I just kept shaking, kept throwing
Mhm.
sliders, and went to the dugout, and I was like, I don't know what's going on." I got out of the inning, and I went back out there for the second, and again, threw all sliders.
Mhm.
The first couple warm-up pitches were fine, threw all sliders in the inning, got out of it. Um, but I came in the dugout, and my hand was, like, purple
Mhm.
down to my knuckles, and I was like, "This is not good." Dietz came up to me and said, "You're done." And I look over, and I see, like, scouts are peeking their heads in, like, why is he not like, why is there someone warming up in the second inning?
Mhm.
This and that. And then, so fast forward to the next week, we're playing at home. We have a back to back home series. Um, and they send me to the doctor, Riverbend in Eugene. And I go in there. There's like, I mean, I'm oblivious to it. Like, I don't know what, like, they didn't tell me, like, hey, you have a doctor's appointment. You're going to go see
Mhm.
this doctor. And I go in there, and they put a catheter in, like, my groin, the side, like, almost by my hip flexor. and it goes up in around my heart, through my shoulder, into my elbow, and they put dye in there to see what's going on, and then they end up using the same catheter. I found out that I had 2 blood clots, that 1 blood clot in each of my arteries in my wrist, and so I ended up being in ICU for 72 hours, um, and it was there was a lot that went on in that. I had to be on my back the entire time for 72 hours. I couldn't move, couldn't walk, couldn't do anything. If I laughed or, like, tightened my core, I would start bleeding from my groin because it was in my artery in my groin.
Yeah.
And so it was after a Friday or Saturday game, the whole team came and saw me, and I remember Gabe Matthews and Spencer Steele were in the stayed after. They came separately. I couldn't remember exactly what it was, but Gabe like cracked. They were there for like an hour, half an hour, and Gabe like cracked the joke, and I giggled, and then he was like panicked. He was like, "What's going on?" Like he's like, "Look down." And I was in like an inch of blood
Oh
in
my
there, and like
gosh.
he hits the like the call sign and everything, and uh the doctors come in, the nurses, and they're like putting full pressure on there, trying to clot it, try to stop it. And so yeah, it was that was a great start to 2019, I would say. But fast forward throughout that year, I'm traveling throughout the country. My agent, Steve Cantor, is just amazing. He's great with the medical side, and I mean everything in general, but medical side especially. And got me to see a couple like high end specialists, in LA and stuff like that. And once the end of the year came, the draft was coming along. I didn't play the whole year. I was still playing catch and stuff, trying to figure it out, but there was a lot of stuff that went on that I just, obviously couldn't come back. And so come near draft time, I was sit I was actually in it's crazy to think about this, but I was in the top so I was the top 50 prospect in the draft of 2019. And so when you do that, you have to get an MRI to make sure, the teams know, like, oh, is he healthy? Is he not healthy? There's been a couple high prospects that have they found that they had partial tears in UCL, their shoulder, stuff like that. And so when I got my MRI, I ended up calling my agent and being like, "Hey, you need to get him to a doctor now. Like, there's no waiting. You need to give him a doctor now." And so he calls me and he's like, "Hey, I called Dr. Pearl at Baylor. I need you there as soon as you can." I was like, "Okay, what's going on?" He's like, "You have a blood clot in your shoulder. That's like been the stem of it, and we need to get you to Dallas ASAP." I was like, "Okay." So our director of ops and George Horton got together, got me a flight right away. He's like, "Hey, we'll get you there on Thursday." I think this was like a Tuesday or whatever it was. And we get out there, and the Dr. Pearl stayed later than he should have because our flight landed later. It's probably like 8:30 at night. You do an ultrasound on my shoulder. He's like, "Yep, I'll see you at 4 a.m. for your surgery." And I was like,
Wow.
"Okay, what's going on?" So ended up coming in. We stayed at the hotel across the street. Came over, had my surgery, and I woke up after the anesthesia wore off, and he came in and, like, checked to see how I was doing. He's like, "Yeah, your blood clot was covering majority of your artery. Like, you were a month away from losing your hand, your arm, or dying because you were so far along." And
Wow.
so yeah, and so I was in the hospital for I can't remember how many days. I think it was like 4 or 5 days, but I had to go back in for emergency surgery after, after the first day because I had gone so long without the blood clot or without blood flow, on like, through my shoulder that it was like when you drink ice cold water after being dehydrated for a day, it's like it broke open and it hurt. And my arm swelled up, triple the size. They had to take me in to drain the blood. I had a drainage tube in my bicep, stuff like that. And yeah, it was a crazy experience. And then we got back, and then the draft happened, and it was crazy.
How do you That's unbelievable. I've never heard this
Yeah.
story, and just all that kinda went into it. When you were going through all of those things, you end up in a hospital right after you're making a Friday night start opening day against Texas Tech. You're in the hospital the next week. Was your thought more about baseball? Like, am I gonna be okay? And, am I still gonna be, a high draft
Mhm.
prospect? Or was your thought more like, all right, am I gonna be okay? Like, just in life in general? Because as an athlete, I feel like a lot of times our focus is just like, okay, when do I get to go play again? Rather than, oh,
Mhm.
this could be something that's seriously wrong.
Yeah, so I mean, originally, so when I went to ICU the first time after the first week of the season, the doctor told me there which is not really something you want to tell a 20-year-old or 21-year-old at that time. He was like, you're never gonna throw a baseball again. You're never gonna pitch again. Like they pretty much told me that my baseball career was over.
Mhm.
And so like at that time, like obviously, I was in there for 72 hours, and the dark thoughts start creeping in when you're just sitting there by yourself at 4 a.m. They had to come I think it was like every 4 hours to take my blood to see if the blood thinners were like, if my blood was still thin enough to be able to break up the clots and stuff like that. And so, I was sitting there like trying to help myself and keep it going. And I will say, like, we had our academic advisor at that time, uh, Jessica, she came and she helped me a lot. She came during the first pitch of every single game, brought me snacks, brought an iPad. We watched every pitch of every game that weekend, and um, she helped me a lot when it came to the mental side of it, to be able to like keep my mind from wandering. And
Mhm.
so, but at the same time, like I said earlier, I was like 21 years old. Like I feel like I'm invincible. Like I don't know. Like if it would have happened now, who knows? It's like, I mean, I'd be hanging them up right away. I would
Mhm.
think at that point, I get, especially with a kid now, and I got, I got a beautiful wife and family and everything, and it's tough. It's a different aspect when it's me, that just me then,
Mhm.
and beginning of my career, and then compared to now, it's a completely different story. So um, the mental side definitely took a turn
Mhm.
from being ultra confident, literally 7 days before that, ready to go, to okay, they told me I'm never playing again. So it was extremely tough for me at the time, but like I said, I felt like I was invincible. I felt like, oh, I'll be able to throw Friday next week. That's what I told the doctor. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
once I'm out of here, I'll be good. I'll go right to practice. I'll be fine.
Yeah, just kind of that thought of, all right, once my hand stop isn't as purple, I'll just throw next week and I'll be totally fine. And I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
they're like,
that's the thing.
I was like, oh, the clots will be gone. I'll be good. I'll be good next week. I'll be fine.
Yeah, and especially in your position when you are a top 50 prospect, and you almost feel like you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And when you go out on the mound, the other
Exactly.
dugout is afraid of you. They're a guy that they don't want to see that day. Has to be
Exactly.
so tough. And so you get the surgery in Dallas. How did you stay positive throughout that experience? When the draft passes, and you're expecting to go in the first two rounds, and that's not the case. How did you stay positive throughout your recovery process?
Well, I help from my agent for sure, because I ended up getting drafted in the 27th round that year
Mhm.
by the Angels after not throwing. So that gave me a good sense of mind. Like, okay, they see a lot of value in me. I threw 2 innings the entire year, and
Mhm.
they see value in me, and um, it was definitely tough because I mean, season was over. We were in summertime, going like I didn't know what the next year had in store for me. Um, but me at that time, I was thinking, okay, I'll go back to school. I redshirted. Okay, I'll be a redshirt
Mhm.
junior. I still have 2 years eligibility left. Um, and so I ended up just like trying to work my tail off to go out there and try to be who I was before. And so um, I stayed in school all summertime and lifted with our strength coach Daryl Hunter, and tried to get as big and strong as I could. So like that took as much
Mhm.
stress off as I wanted. Like going to the weight room, we were there for 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, trying to work and try to get as big and strong as I could at that time, because I didn't know what I was working for at that point. I
Mhm.
was like, all right, Daryl, we're gonna get my legs, because I couldn't lift anything with my upper body at that time. So I was like, all right, let's see how big my legs can get this
Yeah.
this summertime. Let me try to see how big and strong I can get. So that definitely helped a lot. And just like we still had some guys that stayed during the summer. So just being around them and just like constantly moving around, like not sitting still and let my mind wander anymore. So that was the biggest thing for me.
100%. I mean, I think that's great advice for any athlete going through recovery is, I mean, when you're putting in the work, there's action. It's tough for your brain to start wandering or start to overthink about, oh, am I going to come back? What's this going to look like? If you're doing the work, it's tough to even think about anything else. And the work you put
Absolutely.
in paid off. You get to the 2020 season, which unfortunately gets cut short because of COVID. But before then, you're hitting over 400, absolutely raking. You're a COVID All American. How did that happen? How did you kind of have so much confidence when you came back?
Well, I mean, I personally, it was like I felt like I had so much to prove, because my biggest thing was going into the years, like whether it was being a bench guy or like a coach or a hitter or a pitcher or whatever the whatever my role was on the team, I wanted to help them win because I had a whole year of being on the bench watching guys, and I couldn't help them on the field between the lines. So like my biggest thing was whether it was pitching or hitting or whatever aspect it was, I wanted to help the team. And we got we had George Horton for my first 3 years. I love the guy. I mean, he was an amazing coach, amazing person. And Waz came in, who actually helped recruit me going to Oregon before he left for Purdue. Um, and so him coming in was amazing. But I would say the biggest thing was, Jack Marner. I mean, he broke down everything for me. He was a coach at Stanford, so he had pitchers that threw against me. He had, he's seen me pitch, he's seen me hit at that time, and um, broke down video a ton with me. I mean, we got right to work when he got there, um, and so it was just grinding and grinding and grinding because at that time, like 2019 and earlier, I had a lot of power, but I had not a lot of contact. There was minimal
Yeah.
contact. So it was, how do we get better? How do we keep working? How do we, make me a middle of the order hitter with my power? And so we got to work and it paid off. I mean, we just worked the all fall, um, gave me all the cues and stuff to be able to work after practice. And so I just worked my tail off going and, staying in the cages after practice, going in the mornings, doing everything, trying to maximize the amount of balls that I can hit per day to get to eventually where I was.
Yeah, and then 2021 comes around where you're playing your last season as a Duck, and you're unreal. I mean, in the season categories, you're up there in top 10 in home runs and hits, runs scored, and then also in strikeouts on the mound is another category that you have a record at Oregon in. When that season ends and you know how good of a season you had, but you don't have any eligibility left, what was kind of your thought process going when, pro ball came to mind after that?
Yeah. So, I mean, actually, technically, I had 1 year left technically, and so
Okay.
that was actually what came into the picture was I didn't know where the draft was gonna come because I had 1 game against UP, and I had 2 errors that ended up costing us the game, and it was my 1 game in the field, and they're like, "Yeah, you're gonna stick to DHing." So we kept DHing the rest of the year, and, um, I mean, it was a heartbreaker. We're riding high. I mean, we played Central Connecticut in the regional, and we played Gonzaga, who was a really good team. We ended up beating them, and then we had LSU, and we're going down there super high. We're at home. Obviously, we couldn't get a ton of fans, and those LSU fans were loud, and they only had a couple hundred people there.
Mhm.
And so we're going there. We lost game one, and obviously, panic button hits just a little bit. We went out there, and we were back and forth. It was just a heavyweight battle. It was just double home run throughout the entire game, and um, when they got the last out, obviously breaking down like me, Gabe, Nico Teleshay, guys that have been there for 5 years, it was tough. Then, we had Hunter who's been there for 4, Alstrom who'd been there, and Kafka, Brett Walker, and it's just all like we were a very old team at that
Mhm.
time. And so biggest thought was I mean, I didn't know because like we had the we had the thoughts of like, oh, here's the NIL coming. I didn't know where the draft was going to go because I was technically just a DH, even though my arm was healthy enough. And so fast forward to the draft, there was thought. I mean, a little thought, not a ton of thought, but um, of me coming back to school for 1 more year because at that time, I knew my arm was healthy enough. I could be pitching, I
Mhm.
could be hitting as well, and so um, yeah, I mean, it was the biggest thing is like after the draft when I didn't get picked, um, I called Jack Marter, our hitting coach, and I was like I don't know what to do. What are your thoughts? And he was like, "Well, do you think you're ready?" I was like, "You're damn right, I'm ready. I've been ready. I'm riding high. I'm feeling good." He's like, "Okay, well, that settles it. He's like, if you're ready, there's no need for you to come back. You've proven everything you can prove. Like, go out there and play.
Mhm.
Go out there and start your professional career." And so that was the biggest like 100 like that got me to 100% instead of 95 and like having that little thought in my mind. Um, so yeah, that was the biggest thing for me when it came to that was he helped me and talked me through it, and it it definitely helped a ton.
Yeah. And then you sign with the Angels,
Mhm.
and you're hitting. What was the biggest adjustment going from, facing college pitchers to facing pitchers in professional baseball?
Well, the toughest thing was going from, like, the Pac-12 where it's very, like, 87 to 91 command guys with 4 pitches to you're getting these 18-year-old Latins that are throwing 103 miles an hour,
Yeah.
and they got 2 feet of movement, it's you get that, and then, you know, you're facing guys like we had, like, in Everett, you had guys like Bryce Miller, who's now in the big leagues, and then
Mhm,
you had guys in Spokane that are now in the big leagues with the Rockies and stuff like that, so there was a big stepping stone. Obviously, wood bat, not as forgiving.
mhm,
The lights aren't as good sometimes, so like tougher to see and stuff like
mhm.
that. And so it was also me learning how to play a position. Like I didn't really
Mhm.
play a position. I did all the practice, but practice is completely different than games.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of. I mean, it was a big step for me, and there was a lot of overthinking. Like, am I good enough? Am
Mhm.
I? Um, do I deserve to be here? This, and that. And so there was definitely a huge gap for me mentally more than physically. I knew like my physical game, like I was able to do that. Like I hit pretty decent like my first like part season that I played after the
Mhm.
draft. Just struck out a lot. It was, stuff is just a lot better once you get
Yeah.
like especially jumping straight to high A. People's stuff is a lot better and more consistent. Guys are throwing upper nines as a starter and sinker, slider, cutter, change up, and they'll throw you the kitchen sink.
Mhm.
And so it's not like like the Pac-12 where, you had your scouting report, you knew what they were going to throw you and stuff like that. I mean, Pac-12 had great pitchers. I mean, we had a ton of first rounders that we faced and, or first three rounders that we faced in college. And so, um, there was a huge stepping stone once I jumped straight to high A for sure.
Yeah. I mean, in college baseball, it's easy to look at a scouting report and it says this guy's going to throw 80% fastballs. And then if he's
Hmm.
2-0, it's 99% chance it's a fastball. It makes it pretty easy to
Yep.
just go hit when you kind of know it's coming. And then in pro ball, they can throw whatever you want. They really want.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
And then I thought it was kind of interesting how you brought up how you have all these little thoughts, little doubts going through your head, like, do I belong? Am I doing this right? And I mean, that's the same thing I felt when I got to Fullerton is kind of just this imposter syndrome. Like, I got to act like I know what I'm doing, but in the back of my mind, I have no clue if I belong here or what I'm doing. How
Hmm.
did you try to like overcome that and just know, like, all right, I'm a pro baller. I deserve to be here?
Yeah. I mean, it was just kind of bouncing ideas off of other guys that have been there. Um, like I talked to Parker Kelly a lot, who's one of my really good friends. Went to high school with him, played at Oregon with him. His brother's Carson Kelly. And so like going up, like I know he's got experiences through like he asked questions through Carson, who I bounce off Parker and just trying to get trying to get as much information and collect it all as I can. And um, it still comes down to like how's your brain working and stuff like that. Like you can take all this information, but sometimes all of that is overloading. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're running out of pages in your own book. And so um just trying to take bits and pieces was the biggest thing that I learned, like, getting older is, like, don't take, like, all of this and all of this, take this and take this and take
Hmm.
this, and, like, take little bits because every person's different, every baseball player is different, like, you and I could have the same swing, but our swings are completely different at the same time,
Yeah,
it's
the way
like
I'm thinking about my swing is way different than the way you're thinking about your swing.
exactly, and so it's like, you have to be able to balance everything, and that's the hardest thing is being able to balance and, like, I'm in the last year of my minor league contract. And so like I've seen a ton of like I've played with 10-year big leaguers that are in AAA and but I've also played with guys that have been in and out in a month in pro ball. So it's like you're bouncing like you got all this range of people when it comes to baseball that you try to like bounce different ideas off of, different questions, experiences. And it's like it's so overwhelming because the baseball world's so small and you keep talking to people. Like you have to be able to not take chunks of everything.
Mhm.
You have to be able to take little bits to be able to work through your own mind and continue to make your own success. Cause you can't be like, oh, I want to go like I I want to go beat Bryce Harper. I want to
Mhm.
go beat Mike Trout. It's like, yeah, it's true, but they were also 18 years old in the big leagues, 19 years old in the big league. So it's like
Yeah.
it's different. Like you got to be able to like pick and choose because their mindset's a lot different than other people's or your own. So you got to be able to work and pick and choose, like, all right, what's the right thing to narrow down my path to take the right path to where I need to go, not, okay, I have this whole road, but I can swerve any direction. You want to be able to narrow it down and take your path. Yeah, you're going to go this way, you're going to go this way. It's just how it goes. But how am I going to be able to narrow those roads where the on ramp and off ramp are as close to the highway as you can get?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to put it. Because especially for myself, when even when I got to Fullerton or even at Portland, is when there's those guys around you that are hitting really well and kind of rake. You kind of ask them, what's your thought process when you're at the plate? And my first
Hmm.
instinct was they would tell me, and I would just go, okay, that's what I'm going to think now.
Yep.
And but I never really believed it, nor was that really me. Like I got so far
Hmm.
away from being who I was at the plate as a hitter that I had no clue what I was doing and really had no sense of myself anymore. And I think that's something that I bet a lot of guys in pro ball struggle with too.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, you get so many guys that, well, and you also got to think like there's guys that are high school draft picks that are, 17. They could even be
Mhm,
17 that get drafted out of high school and they don't even know what they're doing. You ask them a question, they don't know. They're just like,
mhm. I've never
they're
thought
just
about
so
that.
gifted. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're so gifted that they just go out there and play like they are the definition of see ball, hit ball.
Hmm.
They're not like me. I had to be like, oh, like when I was hitting, I had to be like, oh, my hands have to be here to be
Hmm.
successful. My legs have to be in this, like this width to be successful. And so it's like some guys are just gifted to be able to do that. And then there's guys that have to spend 6 hours a day in the cage to be able to do that. And so it's like there's just how it is. Like you get guys that like when it goes to like injury sides, like guys that go out there and they just run. But then you got
Yeah.
guys like, well, me getting a little older now in my career, like takes me a little while to get stretched. And so it's like
Hmm.
it's polar opposites on body, mind, and just everything. Like they also had a different like, and then you think about it where on the hitting side, I mean, you get on the pitching side too, but I would say more the hitting side is you get different coaches at each level, and one guy's gonna tell you one thing at high A, you get to when you get called up to double A the week later, that guy's gonna tell you a different thing, you go to triple A the week later, they're gonna tell you something different, and then the guy in the big league is gonna tell you something different when you get up there, so it's like it's like you gotta take little bits and pieces
Hmm.
throughout your career to be able to be successful, and you can definitely tell the guys that struggle are the ones that take
Try to do
all of it
everything.
and
Yeah.
try to mesh it into one ball when you have to take bits and pieces throughout.
100%. I want to talk about your transition into a pitcher. What was that like? How did that come up? And then I love how you just dove head first. You were like, all right, if this is what I need to do, this is what I'm going to do. Can you talk about that experience a little bit?
Yeah, so previously being drafted by the Angels in 19 as a pitcher and then signing with them in 21, I kind of figured eventually that there was going to be some sort of pitching talk.
Hmm. Hmm.
Didn't know it was going to be that early in my career, a year into being signed, but I I had a feeling it was coming. I mean, I was playing infield, my arm was healthy. I mean, uh, I remember we were in Vancouver and I had like a backhand down the line and I crow hop and threw it across a diamond. And it was like 90, 95, 96 across the diamond. And a week later, I get a call because I knew we had a guy that was in Double A the year before with us, and we just signed him back to a minor league deal, and we found out that he was coming to High A, and he was a third base, first base, and I wasn't playing very much, and I was like, okay, like this is going to get very interesting for me. And I get a phone call on like a Wednesday or whatever it was, and we were in Everett. I get a call from my head coach or my manager, sorry, and he's like, hey, this is at 9. He's like, meet me in my room at 10. It's my room number. I'm like, okay, well, this is good. At least I'm close to home. Like I can have my dad come pick me up and I can,
Yeah.
drive home or whatever. And so I get into his room. He opens the door. He's like, hey, Kenyon, how you doing? I was like, I'm good. And he's like, yeah, it's a tough time. This and that. He's like, yeah, I'll pull up a chair. I was like, all right, fine. Keeps talking and everything. He's like, so when was the last time you pitched? I was like, oh, like sat up on the edge of my seat. I'm like, oh, so okay,
Yeah.
what are you saying? He's like, oh, Doug will be in here in a minute. I was like, and Doug was our pitching coach. I was like, oh, I love where this is going. Okay, all right, we're good, we're good.
Yeah.
I'm in the clear. And so we had a conversation, and it was funny. My dad literally drove from Portland to Everett, or from Beaverton to Everett, and brought me my pitching glove that was sitting on his mantle because I didn't know that I was pitching.
Perfect.
So Yeah, drove it up there. I threw a bullpen that day. Hadn't touched the mound in 2 years.
Mhm.
Threw a bullpen that day, so I went it was like 2.5, 3 weeks on the mound in bullpens. I was still in high A doing it. I was on the development list, just throwing pens, getting my arm ready, and
Okay.
the numbers were really good, and so they were like, "All right, 3 weeks in, you're going to Arizona, you're gonna throw games." So I actually went down there and, threw, and I threw really well. I mean, my velo was harder than ever has been. Like, my
Mhm.
first pitch in Arizona was 97. I hit 97 one time in college. And so,
Wow.
like, everything was working, and I threw 2 weeks in Arizona, and they shipped me straight to low A. I ended up closing for low A. I threw 20 innings and had about I think it was like 38 strikeouts in 20 innings and threw well, and then, I actually got invited to the fall league that year
Okay.
after throwing 20 innings, which was pretty special. But that they invited me to the fall league, I ended up pulling my flexor in my forearm, and so I ended up, rehabbing for 3 months and wasn't able to go to the fall league. So that was tough because that was always like my big dream. Like, once I got the Pro
Yeah.
Bowl, I was like, the fall league is like the cream of the crop. Like,
Mhm.
you get the offer, you're not turning it down. So, um, that one kind of hurt mentally, but yeah, I was grinded through rehab and everything, and actually ended up getting the invite to big league camp that year, my first
Okay.
spring training as a pitcher. So that was very special to me. And the Angels, being able to offer me that was super special and meant a lot to me, and brought back a lot of reassurance. Like, I still have it.
Yeah.
Like, we get back to the mental side from 2019 is like, okay, like, I still have it. And it's actually funny. So going back to that first bullpen that I threw, it was funny. We had our our infield coach in high A at the time was Jack Santora, and he's actually the infield coach in AAA where I was at the last 2 years
Mhm.
in Salt Lake. And I got off the mound for my bullpen that first day, and he was like, "Are you are you smiling? Like, I've never seen you." He's like, and I'm like, I'm a fairly happy-go-lucky guy when I'm like off the field and stuff. He's like, "I've never seen you this giddy and this happy since I've known you." And he knew me for 2 years before,
Mhm.
or the 2 years of pro ball. And I was like, I mean, I'm pitching again. Like, that's the biggest thing for me. And
Dude,
so,
that's so sick. Um,
yeah,
I mean, especially going into that conversation where you're in a hotel, manager calls you in, you're like, all right, this is where it ends. And then it's almost
yeah,
just like that little moment in your life that changes everything and
hmm
just set you up for, where you are now. And you've been unreal. And I mean, like you said, is going from not pitching for, 2 years, 2 plus 3 years plus, and then you're back on the mound and you're just feeling like the man again. And now you're in AAA. How do you stay so consistent on the mound? I think that's one thing a lot of guys struggle with is, they're lights out one night, the next night they have no clue where the ball's going. How do you stay so consistent?
yeah. So, I mean, this last year was probably the first year where I actually felt comfortable, I would say, because I was still my first. So 23, I started. So, like, 22 when I first started pitching, I was just gripping and ripping. I was in low
Okay.
A, and I think my final numbers on the year were like 96% fastball or something like that.
Mhm.
Like, I was it was like I was at a pro day just trying to
Mhm.
pull down and see how hard I could throw it, and ended up working out pretty well. And so, but I got to double A. I started in double A in 23, and I started off the year super hot. Like, 2 months, I think I gave up 1 run in the first 2 months, but then June hit and it was just spiral. It was like 5 run outing, 4 run outing, 6 run outing. And then the ERA started skyrocketing. And
Mhm.
um, I was still trying to figure it out. And then it was like, all right, let's try to do this. Let's try to do that. And so that's where it's back to, like, I was struggling so much that I was trying to grab like ideas from everyone and like, oh, I'll do that. Oh, I'll do this. It's like, oh, let me see your pitch grip because I want to throw that pitch, even though this guy throws, sidearm. He throws them down
Yeah.
here and I throw up here. And so it, I was trying to do that. And then um, in 23, I ended up going to AAA the last month of the year, didn't throw very well. And then the next year, and I went, uh, I started the first week in double A, and then I got called up to triple A for a majority of the season, went back to double A. And then when it came to the end of 24, 2024, I worked with our pitching. I got put on the development list at the trade deadline because we signed um, a few guys. We traded from guys from the Red Sox, and I got put on the development list, and we're like, all right, our pitching coach Shane Liu was we were like, all right, we're gonna figure this out. So we kind of just completely changed the way I am. I used to be a first base side. Now I'm on the third base side on the mound.
Mhm.
And then he's like, we're going to shorten your arm up because it was super long, super inconsistent. Shorten my arm up. And then fast forward. And so I did that when I went to double A and it ended up working out well. I threw pretty well. And then um, this last year, fast forward to it, we, I started the year on the development list and spring training didn't go very well for me. I was still trying to find my identity as like
Mhm.
not as much as power pitcher, more of like I need to be more of a strike thrower. I need to be
Mhm.
in the zone more. I can take a couple notches off the fastball to be able to spot up more and get outs. Started on the development list in 20 at the beginning of this year, and we completely shortened up my arm and started throwing cutters. No more four seams at that time, and I was like cutter, slider, curveball, and so completely changed my identity. I used to be a huge fly ball rate pitcher
Mhm.
because I was four seam guy at the top of the zone, and then now I was ground ball rate, and it was like
Mhm.
55% ground balls now, so it's completely different.
Yeah.
And so trying to change my identity to that, and it ended up working out, and the confidence started to kick in more and more because I was being consistent. It wasn't every 2 weeks something new was coming in.
Mhm.
I would go up to Shane and be like, "Okay, what's this like little like why did this happen? Like what's the little thing?" And it'd be like, "Oh, it's just your hand position, little things like that." It wasn't like, "Oh, your arms over here, your legs going too high, your head's
Yeah, I need you
moving,"
to
stuff
raise
like
your
that. It
arms
wasn't like
3 inches. Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't like these big things that could change everything. It was just like little things. So it started honing into even smaller things and smaller things. And so that's where the confidence ended up like getting more even keel. And then going into this off season, like everything's just been I've just been trying to build off of everything that happened last year because I felt like I threw really well compared to what all my numbers said last year. Had a lot of,
Mhm.
you know, bloop singles, broken bat singles, swinging bunts, stuff like that, where the runs started piling up, and then walks came in bunches. So now my big thing this offseason is okay, what's my cue to if stuff's hitting the fan? How do I mellow down real quick on the mound with the bases loaded, 10,000 people in the stands? How do I mellow myself out?
Mhm.
And so the mindset this offseason is literally just focus on one spot of the plate or the catcher or whatever it is. Find my one spot for the year. And when stuff starts going crazy, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and just go right back to where you started instead of not being scared of contact, just
Yeah.
letting them
Figure
hit
it
it.
out, figure it out, figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, the biggest thing as a pitcher is like if you watch like pitchers watch batting practice, how many times do the guys actually score the ball up? It's not every time,
No.
and they
Yeah.
know what's coming. And so it's like, and I know that that being a hitter previous, like it helps me a little bit. It's like hitting's hard. I mean, if
Mhm.
and you're in a sport where 3 out of 10 times being successful is you're a Hall of Famer,
Mhm.
you're a first ballot Hall of Famer, and so it's extremely hard sport, and especially when the ball's going left, right, north, south. Guys are super long legs, super quick to the plate. Like it's super hard. So it's just trying to get to that point, which is my big thing this year, is trying to force everyone to hit the ball. I mean, if they hit a good pitch, tip your cap, move on to the next one.
100%. Um, so what's your mindset on the mound? You get called in, you're coming in from the bullpen, you get on the mound, you see the guy step in the box. What's going through your head in that moment?
I mean, there's only one thing, and it's no one's better than me. That's the
Mhm.
biggest thing. Is like when I go out there, like I've always been always been a big adrenaline junkie on the mound, and so I mean, I'm out there and I feel kind of like a psychopath
Mhm.
in a sense, but I've been trying to tame that a little bit. It's more of not during the inning; it can be after the inning when
Mhm.
it's done. So that's been a big thing for me. But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is no one's going to beat me. I mean that's what our pitching coach and that's what Dietrich put into us, and then that's what our pitching coach in AAA has put into us, and or put into me specifically. And it's like when you go out there, no one's better than you because there definitely were some outings. I mean, there are when you throw when you throw 50 appearances in a year, there's going to be a few outings where you're like nothing's going right.
Yeah.
It's more of the why me instead of why not.
Mhm.
And so it's you got to be able to kick that out of your brain and be able to move on. And so like the biggest thing for me is when I step between or walk out of that bullpen, it's it's just me. It is me in the catcher's glove, and, like, when it for me, there's a thing, like, in college, I had a closing song that was the Undertaker's theme song, the gongs and everything, and so I kept that in pro ball, and I still have that because when I hear that first one, it locks me in right away,
Yeah.
and I just like it because there's no words, there's nothing, it's literally gongs, and there's one thing in my head consistently, it's not words of a song, it's not nothing, it's not the crowd, it is in a sense, it's, like, dark and, like, there's like, you're in a tunnel. I'm in a
Yeah.
tunnel, it's me in the catcher's glove, I'm not even worried about the hitter.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to throw the ball through the catcher and get the inning over with as quick as possible.
I love it. That's sick. Kenyon, I finish every conversation with the same question. If you could go back and just give your younger self one piece of advice, let's say it's freshman year at Kenyon, at Oregon, what advice are you giving him?
Uh, don't take any day for granted because you never know when it's gonna be your last.
Mhm. I love it. And I mean that's perfect for you to say, and you've been through it and look where you
Yeah.
are now. I'm excited for the season for you. I think this is going to be the big year. What do you another question, what are you looking to improve on going in this year? What are some things you're striving for?
I mean, honestly, just building off of last year, I mean, I thought
Mhm.
there was a lot more positives than negatives, and, um, personally, it's less walks. I
Mhm.
don't really care, like, the more strikeouts, it is what it is, strikeouts are gonna come, but less walks and, just more strikes, and obviously, the end goal is to make it to the big leagues and stay in the big leagues, I've heard a lot of things from a lot of people, it's easier to make it to the big leagues, but it's extremely hard to stay there, so the biggest thing for me is, check the first box first and, try to make it up there and then, work my butt off to get there, but, you know, throw well enough to stay, so that's the second box, so you gotta keep going and then hopefully stay healthy and have a good career.
Yes, sir. Kenyon, I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate you having me, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you again to Kenyon for sharing his journey and insight into the mental side of the game. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who would find it valuable. Thanks for tuning in and keep moving forward. Until next time.